Hey guys, welcome back to Total Tailgating at NTP. And today we're doing a produced show because we are doing our Smoky Bones Ribs. It's Halloween time, and of course ribs are going to take a lot longer. We couldn't do it live, but we're going to get started right now with our Smoky Bones Ribs. Now, we did a rack of baby back ribs right in here, and what we did is brine it. Now, on previous shows, we've explained the difference between a brine and a marinade. This is a brine. It's got a lot of water and a lot of salt in it, but it needs to sit overnight for 12 hours if you can do it. This has been in for 12 hours, 8 to 12 hours, because what you're trying to do, the salt is immediately going to start to pull moisture out of the meat, which is a problem. But if you leave it long enough, then it's going to reabsorb that moisture as it comes back to homeostasis and draw in a bunch of delicious ingredients that we've put in this brine. So what we have in this brine is, I just quartered up an onion. You don't even have to peel it. You're just throwing it in with about 3 gallons of water. Cup of salt, half a cup to a cup of brown sugar, some garlic powder. I took a whole clove of garlic, not just a clove, but a whole clove, busted it up, cracked them open, threw it in there, and all that goes in overnight because it takes a long time to draw those spices back in. But what we get when we do it that way is a rack of ribs that is loaded inside the cells. The brining process brings all of that goodness inside the actual cells of the meat, and that's why when you get brined meat, it tastes salty all the way inside. You get garlic all the way inside. And we're gonna pat this dry the best we can. And get this ready for our dry rub. We're doing this Memphis style dry rub. We'll talk about the dry rub in just a minute. I wanna get any of the peppercorns. I also put about a tablespoon of whole peppercorns in there. You can crack those up a little bit and throw them in, or you can just throw them in whole, because again, that 12-hour process is going to draw a lot of that delicious flavor into the actual cells of the meat, which is a different effect than you're going to get from a marinade. Marinade is more concentrated, less water, but it's also shorter term, and it's not going to be able to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish with our brine, okay? Now, to that, for our Memphis dry rib, we are going to add another notion that we talked about quite a bit ago. This is the dry rub that we've made. Now, you'll notice it's a little different. It's not mixed up yet. We made this, if you've been watching this show, we talk about keeping these Parmesan cheese cans that you get, and the kids love to pile up their Parmesan cheese. You end up with a bunch of these empty. Don't throw them away because they make great gifts. We took our rub, and what we did is layered in the ingredients, and what we've got in there is about a tablespoon of cracked black pepper, a cup of brown sugar, a tablespoon of fine ground coffee, 4 tablespoons of smoked paprika, a tablespoon of salt, a tablespoon of seasoned salt, and a tablespoon of garlic powder. But instead of mixing it all together, we just layered it in. I don't know if you can see that, but we layered it in. Think about what a great gift. It's holiday time again. What a great gift this would be. Inexpensive, but really thoughtful and really useful, because all we got to do with this now, this beautiful thing, of course we're going to mess up the colors, but all we have to do now is just give it a shake. Okay, and with that, guys, we're just about ready to dry rub our ribs, but we have baby back ribs here. I'm gonna get rid of this membrane on the back first. We can just peel that off after it's been brined. If it gives you a lot of trouble, you can use a knife, but usually you can get this off, and just a paper towel that keeps your hands dry will also do it, but it's just as easy as that. We're gonna peel this off. Some people on beef ribs, I actually leave the membrane on. Oftentimes, it gives a little chewiness in the back. Some people like it, some people don't. We're going for tenderness right now, so we are gonna peel that off. And now we are ready to take, once again, check out our shaker. I wanna show you how this works because, again, this is something we would have thrown away. We could give this as a gift. One of your friends could be out in their backyard next summer using it, and it's got 2 little openings. It's got the really nice, large hole opening, but it also has the half open shaking side. This is the side that I'm going to use because we're going to put on a healthy dose of dry rub onto this, and you can see how you can shake it on there nice and thick. You have control. These shakers are really fun. Now, if I get a little moisture in there with that brown sugar has a little moisture to it, so I can just shake it up a little bit. And I want to get a nice thick layer, and I actually will dry rub these twice. I'll dry rub it, let it sit for 30 minutes, and then I'll dry rub it again. And I'm going to massage that in. I'm going to keep a wet hand, so I'm going to use this hand as my rubbing hand, and we're gonna rub that in. Want to get all the edges. And again, the shaker will take it right to my edges, and I can just kind of rub that directly into every nook and cranny is what we're looking at here. Now you can do it a lot, you can use a lot less rub than I'm using. We've got the one rack. You could probably take this shaker and make 2 to 4 racks of ribs if you just gave it a light coating. But we're putting it on heavy. I like a nice crust. You're gonna get that bark on the outside. That's one of my favorite parts, Jared. I don't know about you, but I love that bark on the outside of ribs when I get it.
And you're basically just patting it in. You're not like really massaging it in hard? Or?
I'm massaging it in, but yeah, not pushing it in hard. And just making sure it sticks, and eventually it's gonna draw water out and it'll stick on its own. But early on, you can see how the powder itself, but boy, having this can, it's a whole lot better than trying to pour it on with something else. And I can even grab the edges and just sort of tap it on there, massage it in. I am massaging the flavor into the meat a little bit, into the cells. That'll do the same thing as our marinade in the short term, or as our brine in the short term did. But that's a nice thick coating. All right, and with that, these are pretty much ready to sit for just, we'll do about a half an hour. Some people do up to 3 hours. It just depends on what your schedule is like. I think at that point, we're gonna let this rest. We're gonna get our smoker running, and we're gonna get these ribs on the grill. Okay guys, well our dry rub has now set. We let it run for about a half an hour or 45 minutes, and it is looking beautiful. These ribs are ready to go in our smoker. Look at that. Red and pretty. We've even got a pine needle on there for the fall. Our smoker right now is at about 210 degrees. When we open the lid, it'll drop down to about 200, and we're gonna roll this between 190 and 200 degrees for 3 hours, or you can probably do, once the internal meat temperature gets to 165, you probably have to go for about 6 hours. But we're gonna try the short version, maybe keep this at around 190, 200 degrees. What we've got is our thermometer is set here. We have the grill temperature and the meat temperature. You can see the meat temperature sitting outside is at 62, and right inside the grill right now, 209, which is just perfect. And you can see the smoke coming out of here. It's moving quickly. We're not gonna choke anything out in there. It's moving fairly well, and we're ready to put this on. All right, right in the top rack. We wanna keep it fairly cool. It's gonna run up to right around 190 at this point, and close the lid and pop in our smoker thermometer. We're just kind of let that hang now. The smoker we're using, you notice, is we call it the Beast, actually. This is, I want to give a shout out to Jeremy, my friend Jeremy. He supplied venison burger for us for a recipe we did a long time ago. And Jeremy, this smoker is working awesome. It doesn't look like much, but we've got big plans for the smoker. We're going to be doing a lot of smoked meats on it, but we're going to be doing more than that. We've got big plans for it. So keep in mind and remember the Beast. So we're going to let this run. We've got coals over here. If it needs to be warmed up, I'll warm it up a little at a time. Now, you may have a pellet smoker, something technologically advanced. What we have here is called free, and it's called a gift from a good friend, and it makes just as good a food as anything out there.
Yeah, we just picked up maple from the yard.
Yeah, we picked up maple from the yard. We'll get some smoked in it. We got maple. I got some crab apple. We'll be using crab apple for recipes. Remember, we took a Parmesan cheese can that would have been thrown away. We made a beautiful gift out of it. We put our rub in it. It was useful because it's very easy to shake our rub on. Now we've got a friend gave us this smoker. We're using all this stuff. We grabbed maple limbs that were just Widowmakers we found in our yard, and the food we're gonna make off of this is gonna be off the charts. Pretty cool stuff, guys. All right, we'll let this run, and we'll be back to unveil our Smoky Bones. Hi guys, well happy Halloween first of all. Secondly, our ribs are done. So I'm gonna grab them right out of the grill here. We're just keeping them in here for a minute and bring these over. Let me tell you the story on these guys. You saw us put them in the Beast, the smoker, and it rained on us and almost put the smoker out. I charged it back up again. We got it smoked, but then we ended up finishing up our ribs in the roasting pan, which worked out pretty well because we used foil to wrap it up, keep the moisture inside, but also to collect all the juices. And what we've done with those juices is gonna be pretty cool. What we're gonna do, we've actually got them right here. We've just took the juice from the roasting pan, poured it in there. What we're gonna do is make a red barbecue sauce out of this. We're gonna add maybe about a half a cup of red wine to that, about a quarter cup of brown sugar, and again, I'm not even really measuring these, and a couple dashes of white wine vinegar to that, and this is just gonna reduce for a little bit, and then we are gonna have a delicious barbecue sauce out of that. Let me actually, while I've got it, let me throw in just a pinch or 2-finger pinch of pepper, 2-finger pinch of salt. I didn't really need a lot of salt with this, and just whisk it together. One more addition we need to make for this is just a little knob of butter. You can see that glistening, the fat just glistens in here. It's gonna add a ton of flavor. And let me throw in just lastly, about a tablespoon of butter in there, and that's gonna add a little more fat content to it. Whisk that in, you can see how pretty that's getting. We'll let that fat melt, and then we're gonna let this reduce for a little bit. What we wanna do is let it reduce just until it coats the back of a spoon. This doesn't have to be thick like your Kansas City barbecue. This is actually more of just a finishing sauce, okay? All right, we'll let that melt down, and let's talk about these ribs right here. Okay, so these are baby back ribs again. We let these run. The rule of thumb I use, a lot of people just pull the bone and see if it breaks loose. If it does, then you've reached collagen breakdown and your ribs are done. What I usually use as a rule of thumb, I will temp it. Once it hits 155, 160 degrees, I'll run it for 6 hours, or once it hits about 190, I'll let it run for 3 hours. So that's what I use. It's worked for me very well. In the ribs, it's a little more difficult because you don't want to hit a bone with your thermometer. So I just put it in the thickest part and make sure it doesn't hit the bone in between the bones, okay? All right, now let's check on this sauce again. I want to make sure I grab a spoon. And it's starting to reduce nicely. Just keep it moving. Very simple to make, and give it a taste. I do want to taste it as I go before it reduces all the way down, just to see if it needs anything. Yep, I did not need that salt in there, but that's okay. That actually tastes really good. All right, it's gonna have sweetness. It's got all the juices, all the drippings, so it's got all the flavor that we put in our dry rub with the brown sugar, the pepper, the garlic powder, etc., etc., etc. All right, so let's just let that continue to reduce for a few more minutes. I'm gonna give that a taste again in just a minute. It's actually coming around pretty nicely. That's gonna concentrate all those flavors in there. While we're doing that, another thing that we did is we wanted to go ahead and add an addition to this. We wanted a veggie, okay? So we got these ribs, they're fatty, they're delicious, they're smoked, but we wanted to add a veggie. It's fall, so we decided on butternut squash. Partly because I think butternut squash is delicious, and partly because JR and I kind of agree that butternut squash sort of has the shape of like a dead head, okay? So what we're going to do, I roasted this out nice about 50 minutes at 400, maybe 60 minutes at 350 if you're running that way. And here's what we got. Now we're gonna open the crypt, check out the effect we got on our butternut squash. All right, I cut some eyes in there, some dead eyes, the dead face. That's gonna be our dead head butternut squash to add to this recipe. And with the ribs, it's gonna taste really good. It's got that sweetness. You can go sweet or savory. You can add brown sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, things like that, or you can go savory and just add some butter and some salt, pepper, those kinds of things. But we'll get back to that in just a minute. All right, let's check our sauce. This should be getting fairly close now. It's bubbling good. Let me take a little bit of that fond. Now, here's one tip in case you don't know. All this dry stuff that dries around the edge when you're making a sauce is called the fond. You want to get that into your sauce. That is delicious goodness. And that's going to also thicken the sauce. That's just the area that dries out on the edges. And let us know your tips on how you like to do your smoked meats, your Boston butt, your ribs, things like that. How do you control your temperature? When do you decide they're done? Do you do the bone test? Do you probe them with a temperature gauge and keep an eye on that? Do you have a rule of thumb? How do you do it? I'm interested. I've heard several different ways of doing it, but I'm always interested in finding especially a new rule of thumb that kind of makes it easy for. My sort of 3 hours at 190 6 hours at 155 to 165 has seemed to work pretty well for me. All right, now you can see, guys, this is starting to coat the back of the spoon.
Wasn't even on purpose, but it looks a lot like a cauldron.
Looks a lot like a cauldron. We got a lot of Halloween themes going on. We're gonna do even a little more of that here in a minute. All right, so again, I am just about where I want to be with that. We're gonna let it go for just a little bit more and give it a taste. Ooh, that's really good. That's concentrating nicely. I'm liking that. All right, just a few more minutes on that, and we're ready to start assembling our smoky bones, okay? First thing we need, though, I gotta have the sauce to put down underneath, but one thing I made that is kind of an extra addition, it doesn't necessarily make sense with our recipe, but this is a South Carolina mustard-based barbecue sauce that I made. It's about a half a cup of mustard, quarter cup of maple syrup, which, by the way, I actually glazed the ribs with maple syrup because we had it. If you saw our Medicine Man cocktail recipe, you understand what I'm talking about with the maple syrup. Glazed it a little bit with that, but I also added it to the South Carolina mustard-based sauce because I love it. And JR you were always a fan of mustard when we were growing up, and I never quite caught on until a little bit later. But this is basically mustard, a little, you can do sugar, brown sugar. I've got the maple syrup, salt, pepper, vinegar, and any other spices. I added a little bit of the dry rub to it as well, but we'll be using this as well in our recipe. All right. All right, let's see what we got here. Take one more shot, make sure we get all that fond off the edges. It's thickening up nicely. I don't want it to burn in here. And once you get your sauce to the point where it starts to thicken up, you gotta keep an eye on it because that sugar can quickly burn, and that's the last thing we want, is to ruin this. Now, a final finish on this, and this is another tip for the day, just hold right there, and one little addition we wanna make to this sauce as we turn off the heat is to go ahead and add one more pat of butter, about a half a tablespoon this time, not quite as much. We want to add that on top, and what that's going to do is it's going to make your sauce have a nice sheen to it as a finish. And you can see in the bottom of that pan, you can just see how that's thickening up. That is right where we want it, right there. All right. And this has got the perfect thickness to it. Again, it's not like your barbecue sauce you're gonna buy in a bottle. This is more of a finishing sauce. It's got all that glossy goodness to it, and it's got all that flavor. Don't let that flavor go to waste, which if we had cooked the whole thing on the smoker, we wouldn't have probably been able to capture it because I had cheap foil anyway. I would have never been able to catch it. All right, guys, I think we are just about ready for a little bit of assembly. And I say we go plate down some of this barbecue sauce. Now, we figured for Halloween, why not create basically a crime scene out of this whole thing? We got all this death stuff going on, so let's just do a little bit of that, and let's just see what we can do with this, huh? Now, to that, why not cut? Oh, that is fall apart. JR, just while they're, just take that and tell them what they're missing.
Oh, man. Hurry up and finish this shot.
Hurry up and finish that shot. All right, we got ribs. He's got his heart there. We got the other set of ribs here. It's kind of falling apart, but not too bad. Let's just do it this way. Since you guys already know what it looks like there, we'll do that. I think we need more of that sauce. Again. That looks good, and this is gonna taste. You can tell when it falls apart like that. You can't even hold the thing up. Let's get our little dead head on there. And while I'm at it, why not, for effect, since it is Halloween, and I hope you have a good one. Be safe. I hope those kids have fun at their, now it's usually like trunk or treating. It's usually in a parking lot here anymore. So, all right, a little bit of that. All right. Some more of this sauce. Who knows what happened to this guy? Well, you know what? We could take a shot at it. It's a possibility. Maybe it was a gunshot wound. I don't know if that was a 12 gauge or what, but all right, this guy's a mess. He is definitely dead, all right? Yeah. And that is our...
whine a little bit.
That's right. He just needs to rest for a moment. Is that what you're saying? Now, we use red wine in our sauce. Why not throw a couple glasses of that and get ourselves the picture that we're looking for. Guys, this is gonna do it for our Smoky Bones Halloween goodness show. Hope you enjoyed it. Check it out though, we gotta try these because I know what you're wanting to know is, do they really taste good? So I'm gonna do my best. I don't know, I don't wanna get too Frankenstein on you, but I'm about to rob the grave right here. Let's give these ribs a try, okay? Let's grab one of these. Look at that, look at that. Comes loose, gotta get some of the sauce on there. Oh, it just falls apart.
Oh, Cheeto, save me a seat at the movie theater. I'm gonna be late. Tender, juicy, smoky. The one thing I was worried about that we didn't have much control over, that sauce. Actually, the two sauces are working nicely together, but that finishing sauce adds a lot of sweetness, a lot of roundness to it with the red wine in there. Guys, this is and it's just, you can't even pick it up.
Let's get it close.
Look at that. If we eat a few of these, we are gonna have ourselves a skeleton very soon. There isn't gonna be much left. Look at this, when it does that, you know you did your job right.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this Halloween edition of Total Tailgating, Smoky Bones. Have a safe and happy Halloween, and we'll talk to you again next week.